Sansa's in danger even if she doesn't realize it.
You remember what happens to people who bore me?
Winter is coming. We know what's coming with it. We can't face it alone.
Hey everybody, welcome back to What the Flicks reviews of Game of Thrones. Today, the 5th episode of the 5th season, Kill the Boy. First of all, I want to start by saying they do a great job of taking these sort of abstract themes and really working it into the story in a way that often does not seem particularly forced. Like here you have Kill the Boy, which as we're going to talk about, is both a stated theme early on in one of the scenes. It's the backstory of one of the main villains of this episode. It literally, there's kids who might be killed. So they do a very good job there. So overall we have that theme, but generally we do sort of progress in our reviews, sort of segment by segment, I guess, scene by scene. And the episode started on a very sad note, on the resolution of the battle that ended the last episode. So we have Grey Worm and we have Barristan Selmy, and we'd been predicting, who would make it through, and I think we generally predicted both would die. I had hope, obviously, but I don't know that we actually thought they would both make it through.
No, I would like to note for the record, you can go back and check the old tapes, that I got it completely right. Okay, Barristan Selmy.
We'll check those tapes.
I said, yeah, because Barristan, with all the talk of, here, in the old days of Rhaegar and la la la, I'm like, this guy's dead already. Okay.
He's playing his funeral march by talking like that.
And I think I said in the last episode, even for Game of Thrones, I don't think killing Grey Worm is the right way to go. He's too young. There's too many plot lines yet to go. I mean, they'll kill him eventually. They'll kill everybody, right? In the end, by the way, there will be a nuclear explosion, and every character you've ever loved will die. Yeah. Or the doom will set in again, perhaps. And a reference to Valeria that we'll get to in a second. But yes, so Barristan Selmy's dead. I'm not sweating that, because that dude had an extraordinary good and long life.
One of the most renowned knights in history.
Yeah. In Game of Thrones years, he lived to be 900.
Yeah, okay. That's a good point.
Right, so Grey Worm, he survives. He has a little romantic moment, as much as Unsullied can.
They can go a little bit farther.
Right, and so I'm happy. Hey, look, 1 out of 2 in Game of Thrones still alive that you like, I'll take it.
I have a quick question about being Unsullied. So what does that entail? Like, as he was kissing his lover as he's recovering in bed, I was thinking to myself, is he sullied now? Right?
Is he sullying his sheets? Well, as an Unsullied, I can say that no. So I don't know if they're doing it the same way as in the books or not, but we're led to believe that at the very least they've been castrated, possibly completely gelded.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, so it's like Varys, basically. At the very least, they're not capable of being physically aroused, or unlikely to be, and it's possible, but I don't think they've ever really gone into if they actually removed everything.
Wow.
But there's not going to be a lot of Grey Worm action, if you know what I mean.
Okay, all right, so...
he won't go from Grey Worm to Grey Scale.
Oh, jeez.
Okay.
Oh, poor guy.
So here's my take on that. Look, just because they cut off his gonads at a minimum, as John points out, doesn't mean that he can't fall in love, doesn't have human emotions. So he can still really, really want to hold a woman, kiss a woman, and
do various other things.
And have feelings.
I've seen books.
And have feelings associated with that, right? It's like we in the genital community, okay, like feel like, well, I mean, if you're not gonna fuck her, what's the point, right? No, the point is to feel affection towards her.
I totally understand that, but part of the reason why they get rid of the gonads is because they don't want them to have that weakness of falling in love. And it turns out that strategy not so successful.
And when we first sort of meet the Unsullied, they point out that part of the training is that they have to, they raise a puppy to like 1 year old, and then they have to strangle it. And before you can become an official Unsullied, I don't know if they mentioned this in the show, but in the books at least, they give you a coin, and you go to one of the slave women and you purchase her child, and then you have to kill it in front of your masters. And it's to show that you will both follow any order and that you have no attachment to anything. That's why you kill your own puppy. Like, you kill the thing you love. You kill the boy, or the boy puppy anyway.
Okay, so
but he has become attached, like enough that it shames him. Like, he's so naturally not supposed to do that.
That's why he's shamed. That makes all the sense in the world. And so, Anna, you bring up a really good point, because now we're beginning to see the Unsullied become sullied, right? And become attached to things. and hence develop weakness, right? I mean, it's not just Grey Worm, it's actually more so all those guys who've been visiting prostitutes and cuddling with them and getting killed by the Sons of the Harpy, right? So that's why they were supposed to be unsullied.
Yeah.
And now she's got them all sullied up. And which goes to the
It's a useful term.
Sullied up.
Yeah. Now, which then goes to the heart of Daenerys' weakness, both her strength and her weakness. And by the way, Daenerys, welcome back to the Game of Thrones reviews.
Sorely missed.
So she frees people, hence she gets all of their support and etc. But then she frees them, with thereby destroying old traditions and creating a certain degree of chaos and anarchy, and making it harder for those people to follow her as their queen.
Yeah.
So there's a good irony that is explored throughout the entire Daenerys storyline of what does it mean to free people when you are their queen?
Yeah, that's a good point. And Daenerys, Dany as I like to call her, spent the last few episodes kind of obsessing over getting people to like her. Right? And it was kind of frustrating because, I mean, my perception of being a queen or a leader is a little Machiavellian, where you kind of have to be a dick, right? Especially in the game for the throne. so you know how I am. I believe in justice. I believe in freedom. I believe in free will. But I do see that as a little bit of a downfall for her. Although I have to say in the very beginning I was unsure because, garnering up that type of support could be a positive. But you're right. I think that sometimes she doesn't play it right. And then before she knows it, a group that she's been trying to court in some way is upset with the decision she's made. And it doesn't work out.
Yeah. And let's remember, too, so as she's like sullying them by keeping them in one area, letting them fraternize with people, at the same time, they're not intended to do the job that they're doing right now. They're not, like, they're supposed to be maybe a household guard, but especially soldiers deployed in ranks. They're not supposed to be walking in twos in the alleyways peacekeeping, and neither really are the mercenaries that she has. And so it's no wonder that we see all these scenes where they're getting knifed in the back and stuff like that. They're not supposed to be used in this way. It's like if we had a crime problem in Baltimore and we brought troops back from Iraq and just had them patrol the streets with AKs. And that's sort of what we set up with our police departments recently. So following right on from the Barristan Selmy and the Grey Worm, and by the way, I always wonder, especially this season, as more and more is changing from the books, if a change should be mentioned in the reviews, and if a character doesn't die or dies, then it didn't go the way in the books. If it should be mentioned, I don't know what your guys' general policy is in that regard.
That's funny you mentioned that.
So much is changing.
Because I was going to ask you about the end of this episode and whether it's also in the book or not about being touched.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay.
But I think in this case it's probably safe considering the character's dead. But Barristan Selmy did not die in that way in the books.
In the books?
No, I mean, nothing like that really happened, but especially Barristan Selmy did not die. And so, especially because he's one of my favorite characters, it just sucks to have him pulled away, and I don't know why they did that. Maybe it's because of the effect it'll have on Daenerys. And the effect, at least immediately, that it has is, like you said, she has to stop with the, I just want to please everyone. And she's like, she wants to solve it. And the first solution is pushing a guy to be burned and eaten by her dragons, which was awesome. The dragons finally ate someone. So that's how she initially responds to it. She takes an innocent man, quite possibly, a representative of one of the families. And it's interesting that in the show they only have like 5. There's like 80 or something in the books. And so is this the way you deal with an insurgency? Just random violence against the heads of families, capturing them all? Is that the solution? It is.
Absolutely.
Really?
I love that solution.
Even if there's no proof that he was involved?
Yes. Okay, so
wow.
Now let's understand, they're not living in our context, they're living in that context. Okay, so would I do that tomorrow in West LA? No, I wouldn't. Okay, of course.
We don't have dragons.
Right. But if I'm the ruler of Marine and I've got this Sons of the Harpy problem it's clearly being motivated by the old families, that's a brilliant move. I was kind of pissed at myself that I didn't think of it, that you pull in the heads of the families. By the way, she sniffed out who was the most nervous. That was a high stakes poker game there, okay? And like based on
But it's dragons.
No, I know. And maybe she just picked out the weakest guy, and that's why he was so nervous. Or maybe she picked out the guy who was most nervous because maybe he's the one who did it, right? So, and that's maybe I'm overreading it. Okay, but having said that, she picks out one of them and goes, okay, that's lunch, right, for my dragons. Because if I go to solve that problem on my own, I'm hitting them here, they pop out over there. I hit them here, they pop out over there. It's a super hard problem to solve. Whereas if I throw it back to the guys who are clearly at the head of it and go, hey, listen, one of you is going to get eaten every week on Monday, okay? If this continues.
Okay, that's a good point.
My guess is it's not going to continue, okay? You might make the mistake. Look, I showed it to you the first time around. You might make one more mistake, right? And remember, it's Russian roulette. It could be any of you that dies next week. Okay?
And your odds go up every week.
That's right. And by the third week, there ain't going to be no Sons of Harpy. Because those guys are going to say to one another the minute they get out of there, hey, whoever the fuck is doing it, I will fucking unsully you, okay? Because we're all going to get eaten by the goddamn dragons.
Yeah.
Put an end to it.
Yeah, it was a great contrast to what you experienced with Daenerys in the previous episodes. It was the strength, and it was kind of the heartlessness that you need in order to survive in this environment.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it is a solution, and I get kind of fired up listening to your description of it. Fired up like I was being set on
Literally.
fire by dragons. But I think there's a danger to it, of course. I mean, it's a show of how much power, in an overt sense, she does have, that she can seize the heads of every family. Like, she's losing sort of the civil war or whatever a little bit in the back alleys, but she can still grab them. But let's say that she were to institute a policy that you were saying, and every week she's going to burn one. She might go from an insurgency to all-out war. If she goes to seize them the next time, and they're like, "No, you're not seizing me this time. I'm using all my household guard. We're having a little battle." I mean, it could elevate and escalate.
But remember, she can win an all-out war, and she can win doing it one at a time. She cannot win the civil war, the guerrilla war, the insurgency.
Yeah.
That's the one thing she can't win, right? Yeah. So she's got to either cut off the head, okay, or be willing to go to war, right? And I think she can do either one of those things. She just doesn't want to get mired or marined in the middle.
Yeah.
Right.
And I wanted to respond to, there was a criticism on Twitter that I think initially, at the very least, makes sense, and maybe you guys would agree with this, that said that the scene with the dragons felt too rushed, in that the last time that she was interacting with the dragons, she had still basically no control over them. They were angry at her because she'd left them alone, and here she is not afraid of them at all. And my response is, it felt like she didn't walk up and pet them or anything like that. I feel like she was trying to project strength by at least pretending to be confident in control. She wants the heads of the family to think that she still is fully in control of these dragons.
That's absolutely true. One last thing about the dragons is that, look, when you're projecting strength, it's really important to do it on a limited scale. If you're George Bush and you're like, I'm going to Afghanistan, I'm going to Iraq, I'm going to wherever, and then next thing you know, you're mired in insurgencies and counterinsurgencies, and you've sapped yourself of your power, and other people don't fear you as much. Whereas you take out one of the family leaders, all of a sudden everybody's worried that you're going to do it to everybody. In reality, you cannot do it to everybody, right? For the reasons you're stating. You take out half of them, you take out all of them, and you're going to have civil war, and you don't want that, and then they'll see that you don't actually have all of that power, right? You use it in a limited and focused way to set a goddamn lesson. I think she did it perfectly.
Okay, so the next big chunk of the story is we jump to the wall, and I liked these little scenes they throw in. So you had the letter about what Dany was up to that Sam is reading to Aemon Targaryen, and it just reminds you, oh yeah, so they're technically related. He must feel some bond. And so it's cool that he gets to hear about her, that news does actually spread despite the big distances involved. And he has that line about a Targaryen alone in the world is a terrible thing. I like that. And I wonder if he's using terrible as in tragic thing, or if he's using terrible in the Targaryen sense of, you don't want to leave one alone because when they're alone, they might go crazy or something like that. And so I wonder if Aemon is sort of predicting this is not a good thing. I mean, granted, he's kind of alone, and he seems to be doing okay.
Well, he's elderly and blind, so he can't really cause a ruckus.
And I but based on that, I like the line about I feel like a 100-year-old man slowly freezing to death. Yeah, it sucks to be up there.
Well, so I don't know how much to harp on this. So I'm not talking about the Sons of the Harpy, so I think that pun is somewhat allowed. At the end of last episode, I predicted Jon Snow's lineage. I don't know if you heard it, Anna.
I did not.
People thought that was scripted, by the way. Oh, he didn't really come up with that. He was like, and then...
Oh, I have an idea. We don't do anything scripted. Okay. Anyway, so I believe that Jon is the son of Rhaegar Targaryen, and Ned Stark's sister. Okay,
Lyanna.
Okay, so so when he said Targaryen alone in the world is a terrible thing, I was like, it's funny because he's also partly referring to himself, but the ironic thing is there's another Targaryen in the room.
If you're right.
Okay, if I'm right. Okay,
Yeah.
which no one knows, by the way. They haven't even revealed it in the books yet. So, but a lot of people think that. And I thought, well, not quite alone. You're not even alone.
There's some irony there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, again, I have to go back to this like constantly. They're changing so much that for all we know, next episode, there could be a proof. Like when he was talking with him, I thought, oh, maybe they're going to reveal something.
Yeah,
We
I
don't
thought
know.
they were going right there at that time. And I thought maybe
It's
Aemon-
entirely possible.
I thought maybe Aemon knows, but it's clear that Aemon does not know.
I don't think, I mean, he's a really smart guy. He gets information from around the world. It's entirely possible that he could draw his own conclusions.
Right. But okay, one last thing about that. Here is a Targaryen. There's only like 3 left. You know, if you take out Aemon, who's about to freeze to death, there's 2 left, right? And one is alone in the world all the way in the south, and one is alone in the world all the way in the north, right? And is about to go further north and be further alone, right? As he goes to get the wildlings on Stannis' ships.
Yeah,
So
on whatever that mountain is.
Look, if you think you have all the layers of Game of Thrones figured out, either A, you're wrong, okay, and you haven't thought about it enough, or B, you're right and you need to get a job.
Yeah.
You're thinking too much about it because there's so many goddamn layers. It's
Yes.
wonderful.
Yeah. So that leads immediately into Jon Snow wants advice from him. This is a big, like, people trying to get advice and pretty much everyone being advised to not worry about getting advice. So he asks about this plan that he has to allow the wildlings through, which he both discusses with Aemon, then he discusses with Tormund in a very tense scene. And it was interesting that Aemon, whose job is to be an advisor, and who obviously has a lot of respect for his own opinion and knowledge and wisdom and expertise, basically tells him, like, don't ask me for advice. Like, you know what you need to do. He actually says the theme of the episode, kill the boy. You need to kill the boy and let the man be born.
Winter is almost upon us. Kill the boy and let the man be born.
I love that line. That was my favorite Game of Thrones line of all time.
Wow.
I thought it was a great line, and I want to use it for my boyfriend when he does things that I don't like. Right? I think
boy.
it's excellent. Anyway, but I think that was the best advice that he could give him, because I think that Jon Snow is making both an emotional decision and also a very good strategic decision. Because on one hand, let's keep it real, he fell in love with the wildling girl, and he has some sort of, you know, positive emotion toward them. And then at the same time, he's right. I mean, he needs more people to join him to fight against the walkers.
Yeah.
So let me say 3 things about that. One, on the strategy, it's really annoying me that no one else can figure out something elementary about what Jon Snow is saying, right? Which is that, look, if you don't bring him south of the wall, even if you don't care about them at all and you're happy that they're all dead, they're going to join the army of the dead.
Yeah.
And they'll be much harder to kill.
Yeah.
You see, at a bare minimum, like, you can't get past that logic. Once he lays down that logic on you, you got to be like, oh, that really sucks, but all right, go ahead, bring him in. Because we don't, and then maybe they hit us from behind and cause more damage in some sense. I get that, but I got to take that risk. Otherwise, I am allowing thousands to join the army of the dead. Because they will clearly be killed and join that army.
I don't know. I think that does make a lot of sense. And so every time we finish an episode, I will read some of the online reviews to get different writers' opinions and everything. And it does seem like, well, why are the Night's Watch and the kid like, oh, well, yeah, they are, you know, possibly going to wipe out the world, but he killed my pa. Like, why are they saying that? But they still have the wall. And from what we've seen of the Army of the Dead so far, and we know that winter is coming and everything, we still haven't seen anything that convinces me that they can get through the wall. After all, the wall was built to keep them out. And so how is a White Walker on a horse, a dead horse, going to get through that wall? Whereas if you bring thousands of free folk on the other side of the wall, and that's some spin there, I'm calling them free folk, wildlings, whatever, they could stab you in the back pretty easily, or rape and kill and pillage and everything. And so we know that the Army of the Dead has got to be a very powerful force, obviously. But to them, I wonder if maybe they've gotten away, they're not scared anymore. I wonder if that threat seems as real to them now, versus the threat that's on their doorstep.
Right, now imagine the giants in the Army of the Dead.
Okay, that's a good point.
All right.
The Giants.
And so
throwing undead horses over the wall.
all right. And then point number 2 is now imagine the Giants on the other side of the wall. Like that's a really trippy thought too. And like the crazy dudes that like to eat people on
The Fens.
the fens on the other
Yeah.
side of the wall. So then you begin to say, well, maybe it's not the greatest strategy. But point number 2 is, so Amos' advice to Jon Snow wasn't, yeah, you're right, go ahead and bring them in. He didn't even listen to that part.
Right.
His advice was, do what you think is right.
Yeah.
Which is not giving him advice. It's actually
Yeah,
giving him
that's true.
Actually giving him the most important advice, which is that, hey, dude, I'm 100. I'm here today. I might not be here tomorrow. But what I got to tell you before I die is, if you think it's right, by all means, you have to do it because that is your job now, right? You can't. The worst thing you can do is not make wrong decisions. It's to second guess yourself.
Yeah.
Because then you'll
Or
be
to
making,
stall and then make
right,
no decision. Yeah.
Right. Because then you'll be making no decisions and backtracking, and then that's a
Yeah.
clear recipe for disaster. Partly going to the initial point that we talked about, trying to please everybody, like Daenerys originally was, is the biggest mistake of all.
I think as a leader, you have to make unpopular decisions. That's the whole point of being a leader. Being a leader doesn't mean winning a popularity contest. So I like that the advice that he got was the right advice. I like that Jon Snow did something risky. I think that there's logic behind it, so hopefully it works out. But, I mean, you also have to keep in mind that it is very unpopular, not only among men of the Night's Watch, but also among wildlings. I mean, we don't know yet, because right now... It seems like it's going to be very unpopular, just based on the exchange that Jon Snow had with... I'm forgetting his name. With Tormund. But we'll see how it goes. I think that it's a good strategic move if people can put their emotions aside and do things logically.
Yeah.
Okay, so one last thing about this. When he said, I try not to look at the episode titles anymore because of Mountain versus Viper. How Kim figured out that it was going to be.
Okay. You're saying like in weeks ahead.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
The next week's episode or whatever it is, right? And it would have been great to have seen, what was his name, Oberyn step up as Tyrion's champion.
And not have known
that it was Mountain versus
Still
Viper.
a good scene, though.
No, it was a phenomenal scene. But so right before I watched this episode, I accidentally saw the title, Kill the Boy, and I was like, oh no, how many boys are they going to kill? I'm like, which boys? Of course, I took it literally.
Every time you see a child, you're like, oh,
yeah, because it's Game of Thrones. And when the Maester starts explaining about Kill the Boy, I was like, oh God, even this guy, he seemed like such a nice guy. Who is he going to tell him to kill?
hey, that steward killed Ygritte. Bitch gotta go.
Yeah, but by the way, I mean, as I look at that young kid, and they're laying on the foreshadowing a little bit there, the one that, of course, Jon Snow saved, but his family was killed and now disagrees with Jon Snow's decision, thinking of Omar in The Wire. And I'm like, watch out for that little boy.
Yeah.
Okay, the little boys do a lot of damage. So he's got a soft spot, Jon Snow does, right?
Yeah.
He likes to, believe in people and set them free, like his sister, not his sister, his niece, Daenerys.
Yeah.
So we'll see where that goes. But yes, I agree with Anna. Kill the Boy is a phenomenal line once you understand what it actually is. And we went back in the day to show you how big of a dork I am. We used to use a similar line from Star Trek, The Next Generation. All of us in college would get around and instead of drinking and doing fun things and getting laid, we'd watch every episode of The Next Generation, right? And our favorite line was when like this U.S. Enterprise would run into some sort of trouble, and
I know what you're gonna say.
Wesley Crusher was on the bridge, right? He was the young kid at the time. And Picard would say, "Get the boy off the bridge."
Same basic idea.
Yeah, and so whenever one of our friends was doing something immature, we'd be like, "Get the boy off the bridge," right? Like watching The Next Generation instead of getting drunk and late in college. We should have all gotten off the bridge.
The one thing I disagree with you there is this last Thursday, Kim and Brett and another friend of ours got together to play a Star Trek board game, basically. And we were drinking, and Brett was doing his Jean-Luc Picard accent the whole time. That was fun, okay? That was the most fun I could have had that night. And one other thing really fast, because we're talking about good lines.
How do we get this boy off the bridge?
I know.
It was fun, okay?
John, kill the boy. Kill the boy, John. Let the man grow.
Throw his body off the bridge. And there was clear, I think, real-world parallels in the half of them hate you already Like, it's a good advice for the president as well. Like, half the country
totally.
definitely hates you already, so just do what you got to do.
I really wonder if that was partially meant for Obama.
I think it might have been. 52% of them hate you already. And then, so Brienne sending a message to Sansa. Nobody cares about Brienne. Anyway.
Yes, the only thing I like about that is when they constantly keep saying, the North remembers.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yes.
I'm joking about I actually really like Brienne. I'm super excited for Brienne to be in the next Star Wars movie. But so far, her arc in this season is not particularly interesting.
I mean, she's just waiting.
She's just hanging out outside in the
yeah.
suburbs.
She might be the savior.
She might be.
You know?
I mean, she's kind of gotta be, right?
I think Sansa is in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. It's
And
getting tense at the Bolton family dinner.
Yes, it is. I can't stand the Boltons. I want them to be victims in the next Red Wedding. I'll
might
enjoy
be.
every second of it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Well, we need new villains, right? I was saying at the
They're good
beginning
villains, I think.
of this season that I'm a little bummed that we've killed off a lot of great villains. Like
Joffrey being one of them.
Yeah, Joffrey and
You still got
and
the phrase,
Tywin.
but they're far away at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, the Boltons are good villains.
Yeah.
I want to keep them around, draw it out a little bit.
Well, and the cool thing is, and we saw that definitely in this episode, it's like a multi-layered sort of villainy thing. So you have Ramsay with Miranda. Miranda, I think is her name?
Yes.
And someone pointed out, like, how awesome is this that Game of Thrones finally has a scene with male and female nudity where none of them are prostitutes and they're talking about something other than just sex. It's like, it's a very equal, progressive scene. And so she's potentially a threat to Sansa as well. I mean, that bitch is mixing stuff up.
100%. She wants Sansa gone. I
Yeah.
can't believe she's in love with the Bolton boy. He's a piece of shit.
I mean,
But she's a
he's
piece of
still
shit,
her
too.
only route to power and money.
That's very true. She's like, what, the candle maker's daughter or something?
the
Kennel,
kennel
but
master.
that's-
Oh, the candle master. I thought they kept
The
saying
candle
candle
master?
master. I'm like, what the hell's a candle master?
The ultimate candle. You've mastered it, sir.
From the
Kennel
flames of
master.
Valeria.
Now it all makes sense.
Yes,
That's
and they
what
go
it
to the
is.
kennel.
The kennel. Okay.
Dogs.
Sometimes the accent gets in the way.
Yeah.
But that whole scene, I mean, it shows you just how crazy she is. They're perfect for each other. When she bites his
She likes the
lip.
pain when she knows how
Don't
to
be
intrigue
jealous.
him.
Being jealous bores me. And then she bites the shit out of his lip.
And
makes
that's
him bleed.
scary.
And he looks like he's about to beat the shit out of her, but then he's like,
But then he's like, oh shit.
I want more of that.
I got some grayscale going on. Yeah. And it reminds me
Then
of a
he
scene.
let the dogs out.
So that reminds me of a scene from the first season where you have Viserys in the tub with the pleasure girl, Doria, the handmaiden, and she's telling him the story, and then he's like, "This is making me sad. I don't pay you to make me sad," and that's a very threatening thing. And so if you're hanging out with Ramsay Bolton, like, you can't misstep. And so she hides the fact that of course she's still jealous, and then she immediately acts on it by going to have her scene with Sansa, where she sends Sansa to see Theon. We see the rage in Sansa's face. Like, Sansa's not a violent person, but I think she was contemplating some extreme violence there when she saw Theon.
Yeah.
Obviously.
But Theon gave her really great advice. You shouldn't be here. Get out of
Period.
here.
Period. Yeah, that's
I
a good
hadn't thought of
point.
it that way. That's
Yeah,
right.
I didn't think of it in a larger sense too. Yeah, she should not be there. Now, we don't know for sure if that was purely Miranda doing it on her own or if that was part of Ramsay's plot to mix stuff up.
Nah, that's her on her own, I think.
He seemed to know that Theon was hiding something at the very least in the scene with where he says, "I forgive you."
Yeah.
But anyway, so then we progress to the most awkward dinner that we've had in quite a while, since perhaps the wedding dinner, where Ramsay's plan seems to be to just totally freak Sansa out, to totally mess things up for her father. We hear about the kid.
I love
What?
that scene
Yeah, I
so
like that
much.
scene.
Okay.
Everybody's complaining, but I liked it.
No. That was an excellent scene, and I'll tell you why. So it starts off with Ramsay being a dick, right? Manipulating her, playing with her emotions, and kind of flexing his muscle, showing that he has some power. And then his father shows, no, sit your ass down. My wife's pregnant, and it's probably going to be a boy. You don't have as much power as you think you do,
Yeah.
right? So Ramsay starts off by feeling powerful, and then he ends up being extremely insecure. And it was just this great scene where everything got turned on its head.
So here's how I was thinking about it. In that room, and it's not a very large room in terms of people, there's outside of Sansa, there is only 1, 2, 3, 4 other people, right? 2 of them have killed 4 of her family members.
And she thinks at the very least.
Right. So, yeah, that's what she thinks. Theon didn't, but she thinks. Yeah. So Theon's killed 2 in her mind, and Roose Bolton has killed 2.
Yeah, and one personally by his hand, actually.
That's right. And they're not the most evil guys in the room.
Oh, that's a good point.
That's amazing,
Yeah,
right?
that wife is devious.
Poor wife. She don't know what the hell's going on.
She's like, ooh, wine.
She shouldn't be drinking if she's pregnant. But
That's
anyway.
right.
That's a good point, actually. They don't know
People
about that.
obsess about that. They're like, that is so immoral.
I didn't even think about it at the time. Yeah, but they know, their science is very advanced. They know from the way she's carrying, it's likely to be a boy.
I know, it's ridiculous.
And the
hell does
maester
that mean?
couldn't tell you not to drink wine while you're pregnant?
Yeah. That's a good point about how evil they are. And he had been controlling himself with her for the first couple of scenes they had together, but he's shown that, no, he's going to continue to be crazy. He's going to continue to have Miranda as his sort of side piece, like even if they
Side
get married.
chick.
Yeah, exactly. She seems like a good choice for that. We have the worst apology ever. When he said, it would have only been worse if he said, "I'm sorry if it offended you that I killed your brothers."
Yeah. The modern day apology.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if you're so thin-skinned that it offended you when I burned your brothers alive.
Yeah, I didn't
Okay.
kill all your brothers. Jon Snow's still alive. Which they forgot about that when they're talking about the blood that she still has. Jon's not that far away. And then I thought there was some chance from the look on Theon's face that he could reveal that he hadn't actually killed her brothers. I mean, I guess that could have potentially been a death sentence since he hadn't told Ramsay the whole
much
time.
worse than a death sentence.
Yeah, that's a life sentence.
Yes.
Yeah, but it looked like he might reveal it. Like he was stalling for so long. I wonder if he will eventually tell her, because he probably wants to be forgiven on some level.
So
Yes.
what I'm having a hard time understanding in this show is why Theon hasn't killed himself yet. Because he's just living a day after day of pure torture and terror. I feel like any reasonable person would have taken their own lives at this point. But I guess it just shows you the will of wanting to live, I guess.
Or that his will has been so broken and he's so brainwashed that he can't think for himself. Like, he's not thinking as Theon, he's thinking as Reek, and Reek's job is to
Reek.
serve his master.
Right.
Yeah.
So he doesn't think, like, he would feel like he was letting his master down if
Yeah.
he killed himself.
Yeah, or he's so scared that he thinks that if he makes a mistake and he doesn't die as a result of the suicide attempt, that the pain he'll suffer from what Ramsay will do to him will be so bad. I mean, and I don't know, I think that he does want on some level to live, but we have heard him ask Ramsay to kill him during the torture scenes of a couple
Right.
seasons ago, which is just awful, man. But so we also have the scene, we go directly from there to Ramsay having sort of a dark version of the Stannis and Shireen scene from last episode, where he talks to his father in private about his mother and his lineage. That's a dark family history there too.
Yeah, he's a product of rape.
Violent rape.
Violent rape.
Under a swinging body that's been hung of her husband.
Yeah, the Boltons make the Lannisters look,
Reasonable.
sanitary. Right? So, I mean, Jesus, just when you think, like, Ramsay can't be topped, then you remember his dad, right? And this Roose Bolton guy, to tell your son, like, oh, let me tell you how I conceived you. First of all, I've been like, Dad, stop right there.
Yeah.
I don't need to know that. And then, oh, yes, your mom, I first murdered her husband and then raped her underneath the swinging body. I don't know. It's so over the top that you're like, okay, dude, I got it. The Boltons are the most, yes, fine. They beat Joffrey.
problem.
Right.
And then on top of that, wanted to kill her, throw the boy into the river, kill the boy in that case.
But in that point, Roose shows that there is a little bit of humanity in him because he did not kill the boy. Right? He let the man grow.
Maybe he should have killed the boy though.
You're worried about your position.
My position is quite clear. I'm your son. Until a better alternative comes along.
But when
Maybe.
Roose says to him, I see you in you the same thing I saw back then, that you're my son. And even Ramsay gets a little touched. He's all like, oh, right?
Yes,
Yeah, in his own psychotic way. The actor there, by the way, is brilliant.
I think he's a great actor.
Man, he pulls off psychotic as good as I've ever seen. Roose there, I sensed, I didn't know whether he was being genuine or if he was playing Ramsay. Because Roose is so fucking evil that I don't think he gives a shit about Ramsay, his son or otherwise, right? And he's trying to get Ramsay to back him, and he's like, Stannis is coming, I need your help. remember you're my son. Oh, I played with your emotions a little bit. Good Bolton trick, right? Now you're back on my team. Let's go beat that. And then later I'll replace you with the Walder Frey's, grandkid.
Yeah, who will probably be a hefty child. And so I already mentioned it was sort of a dark. Sorry. It's canonical. So I already mentioned that this was a dark version of the Stannis and Shireen story where he talks about like, this is how I knew I loved you or whatever early on. But it's also sort of a weird version of the Tywin Tyrion scene where he talked about how much he wanted to kill Tyrion and I'm your father so I didn't, am I not merciful? It was sort of a weird version of that. But I think it's possible Ramsay, or that the senior Bolton was playing Ramsay not just to get his help in the war, but also because it's such a crazy idea to let that crazy motherfucker live in the castle with you. He could kill you at any time. And now that he's having another son, the possibility that Ramsay would kill the wife or the son or him now.
Oh, you're right. Like, it's enormous.
I would tell him that I love you and you're going to be the heir and then kill you later on just so that you don't kill my other son.
Yeah. No, the minute he said he was having a son, I thought, tick-tock on that chick.
Yeah,
right?
she's going to be falling down a flight of stairs.
Yeah, you'd be lucky if you just made it out dead.
Yeah, right. Just dead, yeah. Okay, so we have a sort of mini scene with Gilly and Sam, and Gilly is like sorry that she doesn't know much about the world. That's that little background building scene there. I liked it.
I like Gilly so much.
I like Gilly too. They have a cute little chemistry.
She's the type of person who gets killed right away in Game of Thrones.
She's lived for a while, though.
She has lived for a while. I like that. She's a sweet girl.
Yeah, she's sweet.
Okay, I'm going to throw a super random curveball in here just to go back to Ramsay for a second. I've decided that you're better off under Ramsay than you are under Joffrey. Because Ramsay is smart, and maybe you could play the game with him. Joffrey was so indiscriminately evil that there's no game playing. Like, one day you're going to get a crossbow through the heart and you're done. No matter if you were playing everything right.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
He was a child.
And you don't think Ramsay
There was no rationality behind any of his actions.
Yeah.
There was no strategy.
Right. You have a prayer of figuring out Ramsay. You didn't have a prayer of figuring out Joffrey.
I mean, they definitely share that they are two of the characters who most genuinely just get off on violence and don't like being bored. Which makes both of them unpredictable to some extent.
Right.
Like Frey he's not killing people just to have fun. Like he's doing it because he thinks he'll get something out of it.
Right. So back to Samwell Tarly. I don't care about his relationship with the wildling girl. I never have. Okay.
I'm just hoping for a sex scene.
Yeah, let's hope.
Oh, like we wouldn't watch.
So what I do care a lot about is the next scene where Stannis comes down. And I'm like, see, this is why
that's
I like
a good
Stannis.
scene.
I feel fairly proud that I've been on Team Stannis for a while when no one was.
Yeah, you always support the religious extremist. That's you. I've heard that on Twitter recently.
I'm a light of what is it? The light of Lord of the Light? Lord of the Light
fan?
apologist.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You're a candle master, we'll call you. You like that light.
So finally, someone smart goes, hey, you're the only guy who ever killed a White Walker. How'd you do it?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for being logical, right? But at that point, though, then that logic should further spread. Like they just left it there. But the reality is, then Stannis should conclude, oh yeah, we've got a lot of that Dragonstone or wherever he said, right? He's like, good, I'll go get that. And the White Walkers are no longer an issue. Let's move on with our lives.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Even if you don't know how it killed them, it can under some circumstances. Why don't we get some of that? Why don't we get some?
We're gonna get some of that, and then you know what? I would have even then gone to Jon Snow and said, what I called your unassailable logic earlier is now assailable. Okay, even if the wildlings join the army of the dead, we just get some Dragonstone, kill them all. It's not a big deal. Whereas I don't want the Fen or the giants on the south of the wall. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because the White Walkers are so fearsome, except for the fact that their Achilles heel is so large.
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily true. Like, I think no White Walker has been killed by a man in thousands of years. Like, I could forgive a White Walker from being surprised that Dragonglass all of a sudden shows up. But that's not to say that if they knew that the Night's Watch had Dragonglass, they couldn't defend against it. Like, they might have some defense. You still have to get within arm's reach. And we've never seen it kill one of the Whites, just the White Walkers. It might be that the Whites aren't weak to it.
Okay, no, I hear you. I wouldn't get overly confident against the White Walkers either, but now there's reason to believe that you can bring it down a notch.
Yeah, that's totally true. Then they go to war. Davos doesn't seem to think it's a good idea. He certainly doesn't think it's a good idea to bring Shireen and Lady, whatever her name is, along. And so they're going off. And that seems like, I mean, that's going to be the last half of the season for Stannis. And they're going against the Boltons. The Boltons are preparing for it too. Like, that might be the episode 9 big battle of this this season. You always get one of those each season. And that's certainly going to be, like, if he wipes out the Boltons or if the Boltons wipe out Stannis, I mean, that's huge for the future of the show, obviously.
No, if he wipes out the Boltons, okay, we've gotten rid of some important villains, but it's not that big a deal to the storyline.
I mean, it means that Sansa's possibly saved. You have a Stark in Winterfell.
There's no way that Sansa doesn't get back into trouble.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just keep it real on that. Now, but if Stannis loses, then that's a huge deal. That's a game changer if he loses.
So I mean, what's the Wall gonna do? Like, they can't defend themselves against Bolton's armies if he marches on them. And maybe if they have the wildlings.
And then we have a reign of terror that lasts for a long time. Because who's then going to come?
Dynasty.
Right. Who's going to come and uproot the Bolton dynasty?
Yeah, maybe Dorne will save him. I was really sad, by the way, that we didn't have a Jaime and Bronn scene. They were so awesome in the previous episodes. Maybe next one. And no Arya as well. No Cersei. No King's Landing whatsoever. We don't know what's happening with the crazy religious zealots there. So yeah, this episode was almost as large for what it left out as what it actually included.
It was very gray, starting with Grey Worm, right? But really, like you never got to see the sun that you see in King's Landing. And
except in the last scene of the entire episode. Actually, we had a very beautiful scene, which we'll get to shortly.
It's kind of incredible. Going back to what Cenk said about all the different layers, kind of to bring this conversation full circle, it's incredible that in an hour-long episode, you can't follow along all the different storylines.
You leave out like half of them.
Yeah, there's so much going on. It's impossible to fit it all in.
Yeah.
And this was not a particularly action-packed episode.
No, it wasn't.
This was like, oh, okay, that was like filling in some storylines.
It's story building towards the next few episodes.
Yeah, and it was still that thick with stories.
Yeah, and by the way, so I occasionally will plug the books. Like, if you like this, and especially once this season is over, like, you got to read the books. Like, we're talking about how you can't follow along with all the storylines and all that. They've cut half the plot lines, I would say. There are huge sections of the world that have storylines in the book that just don't in the show. Which they aren't necessarily the best storylines. Like, I think they've kept the best. But there's so much more that fills out the world if you want to read the books.
By the way, my plan is let HBO do their work. I don't want to get, I don't want to ruin this. Yeah, exactly. I don't want to ruin any surprises. I'm going to watch the whole HBO thing through, then go back and read the rest of the books. I read book one.
Idea.
I read book one after season 1 just to get more context, so I understood who all the characters were. Left it there. And yeah, I'll definitely go through again.
And then we have a follow-up. So we had Dany with her first strategy to defeat the rebellion is to feed one of them to the dragons or whatever. Then she gets the advice from Missandei, very similar to the Aemon advice. Like, you get advice, sure, but you know what you need to do. You need to kill the girl, I guess, inside of you. And so then she goes and speaks with Hisdar. And so she's going to reopen the fighting pits, and she's going to marry him.
I will marry the leader of an ancient family. Thankfully, a suitor is already on his knees.
That's a pretty big development.
Yeah, so she's reopening the fire pits the fighting pits. There are fire pits too.
Right.
She has one.
She did reopen the fire pits earlier.
Yeah.
I wonder if she's also a candlemaker.
She might be.
With the dragons.
I thought that was a smart move, especially with the way she did it, because she said, look, I'm going to do it because it's tradition, but no more utilizing slaves in the fighting. And then it just made me reflect on our current society, and we have the exact same thing going on, but we just call it boxing.
Yeah.
I mean, no
Or
one
UFC.
dies, usually.
Well, no,
but
people die.
People do
They
die.
certainly die early as a result of boxing careers.
That's a good point.
And as a result of football, too.
Yeah.
Right, but I think that was a good compromise. Like, I'm not into slaves, yo. Like, let's not incorporate any slaves. But you want the tradition of keeping the fighting alive. Let's do it. I had a hard time understanding why she wanted to end up marrying him. How is that?
It's funny. Before we get into that, as I was watching that scene, I thought of you, Anna, and I wondered whether you were going to be pissed that Daenerys is marrying some random schlep. Like, she had all these amazing suitors, like
like that hot guy with the longer hair that she was having sex with.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that guy.
And of course, the original Dothraki, and and all these like
Powerful men.
Right, all these powerful men, and then she's like, okay, Schleppy, we're getting married, right?
Well, he's wealthy and influential.
No, I know, but it was like, he's not worthy of her. That's what I thought.
Yeah,
Did
I
you think
agree.
that?
I agree, which is why my mind went to, okay, she's doing this for strategic reasons, but I'm trying to understand why. What is the strategy?
I think they explain it a lot better in the books. But I mean, she is the new power in Marine. They're the old power in Marine, and it might be that if she marries one of them, the others would be like, okay, look, she's opening the fighting pits. She's taking one of us into her household. We're going to technically have a king and a queen, I guess. Maybe we can back off on the rebellion because she's not changing everything about our society. She's willing to reincorporate some of the old. And so that might reassure that, they don't feel so threatened. I don't know that it's necessarily the right choice. And I don't think her mercenary boy toy is going to love it.
Yeah. So it's an old carrots and sticks, okay? I mean, I show you the sticks with the dragon, and I'll give you the carrots that, don't worry, the next king will be half Marine. That's huge.
Yeah.
Now, what I didn't like about it was, okay, that fixes your short-term problem or goes a long way towards that. But I mean, you're supposed to go take the Seven Kingdoms.
Stop doubling down on Marine.
Like you're worried about. Like I grew up in a suburb of New York called East Brunswick in New Jersey, right? She's like solidifying East Brunswick. No, dude, you're going to New York. Who cares about East Brunswick? You know what I'm saying? Don't marry the schlep of East Brunswick. Go to New York.
Or maybe she could leave the schlep in charge of Marine, and then she's free to go.
Well, she has a rebellion in Marine, and she needs her people in order to take over any other kingdom. So I think that, making sure that she's solidifying her situation in Marine makes sense. But I also wonder about her admitting that she was wrong. Remember that? Because in that scene, she was like, I was wrong, and I think that it takes a really strong person to admit that you're wrong. I don't know.
Humble brag.
Yeah, yes, it was a humble brag, but also I don't know if that's true in this context.
Why?
Yeah.
To admit that you're wrong as the queen, as the leader.
I think a lot of kings and queens wouldn't. I think that they
wouldn't,
can't.
and I think that in that context is actually strong. That's a strong thing to do.
To not admit. So she shouldn't have opened the fire pits.
No, she shouldn't.
The fire pits. I'm saying it too now. The fighting pits.
The fighting pits.
No, she's saying she should open the fighting pits, just not say you're wrong.
Yeah,
that
don't
she was
say you're wrong.
She's gonna marry the dude. They can be honest with each other.
Yeah. No. I think it totally depends. Sometimes it makes sense to say, "Hey, I was wrong there as a leader," and and sometimes it might not. It depends on whether it encourages people to perceive you as weak. But as he's on his knees, that didn't seem to be an immediate issue there. But I want to say one last thing about that marriage proposal. She's doing what Robb Stark refused to do.
Yes,
right?
that's true.
Robb Stark married for love and paid the price. She's marrying, obviously not for love. She's acting like a real ruler. Okay, she's the queen.
To build alliances.
She will take like when a king takes a bride. Who cares? Who cares if he likes her or not? For the big kings.
Yeah.
Okay, you over there. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll make a political marriage and it'll be better for the kingdom. And that's what she's doing as a strong ruler.
Yeah, it's nice to see. On the other hand, occasionally marrying for love, like with Roose Bolton and his Frey bride. And by the way, so we've had, we're in 5 seasons. We've seen a lot of growth for some of these characters. Yeah, so really fast. I think that there's no better example of the growth of a character than for Dany. The first time we see her, she's being sold to a Dothraki savage and effectively, at least in the show, kind of raped on her wedding night. I know in the book she wasn't actually raped. And now she's like, I'm going to marry you. Thankfully, one of you is already on his knees, and she walks away. Like, she is totally in control now, which is awesome. And then we have the final scene, obviously. We have Jorah and Tyrion sort of bonding over poetry and sightseeing. They're on, like, a Caribbean cruise, kind of. They go through the doom of Valyria. They see the dragon, which is how this season was sort of sold, is Tyrion seeing the dragon. They don't talk about it, which I think is an interesting... None of them say anything about the fact that a dragon's flying over them.
I think that their expressions say everything, right? For Tyrion, it was really a defining moment. It was something that he knew about, but I don't think really visualized it.
And wanted his whole life, is to see them.
Exactly. And I that scene was actually really symbolic for me, because while all of this stuff is happening with all these other people and all these other plots, Dany's got the dragons. Right? So
and they're big now.
Like when you think about that, when you think about the dragons versus the Lannisters, for instance, the Lannisters don't have a chance. So that's why it was such a defining moment for me as well, because I'm like, I love you, Tyrion, and I can't stand the Lannisters. But at the same time, like, look at these dragons. You guys don't stand a chance. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've developed my favorite line from this season. I use as I run the TYT network. Don't forget the dragons.
Yeah.
Okay? Because Daenerys was forgetting the dragons for a long time and keeping them in the basement, right?
She put the dragon in the corner.
And so to me, that's right. To me, that means don't forget your largest priority.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Like, because oftentimes you'll be busy running around doing this and this and this. There's dragons in the basement, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to want to
Yeah.
use them. She does in this case.
Yeah.
So as they're going through Valyria, that's such a cool looking scene.
It's very Lord of the Rings, I think.
Yeah.
A sort of old civilization that nobody can understand and we can't match it again. They sort of point that out.
Yeah, well, in the Daenerys scene, I was thinking of Anna. In this scene, I was thinking of you, John, because I wanted to ask you all these questions. I almost called you up afterwards. But I thought we're going to do it in the morning. Okay, so Valyria, is it in the kingdoms, in the Seven Kingdoms, or not?
No, so geographically, you have like Westeros, which has the wall all the way to Dorne, and then you have Essos, which is like, so you have that going there, and then you have this whole east to west swath with like Braavos and the Free Cities right across the Narrow Sea, and then the grassland she goes across, the Red Waste to Karth, and they're going farther and farther east, down into Slaver's Bay. So they're incredibly far east of Westeros.
Okay,
so it's not quite to Slaver's Bay. They're moving east towards Slaver's Bay.
I got you. So Valyria was not part of Westeros at all.
No, it's far to the east.
But Valyria was like the greatest city in
It's
the
like
world.
ancient China, basically,
Right.
something
okay.
like that.
But I got the sense that it was Rome and Pompeii, and so
Yeah, it was all these great societies that haven't been matched.
So has
Pompeii is probably a good example.
right? So was it about? And then that was my second question. The Doom. Was
Nobody
that
knows.
Okay, so
In the world, at least.
oh, okay. So it seems like a volcano. The fires of Valyria, and then the smoke and the smoke.
Yeah, so they
covers
talk
everything.
about it as being a combination, like people believe it's something like a natural disaster, but something spiritual and supernatural too, that like, they know that, I mean, I think that's effectively when there were more dragons, there's demons, like they think there's all this, like people don't generally go there because of the fear.
And it turns out because of the Stone Men.
That
like
too.
there's a
They
real
send them there,
reason.
yeah.
There's a real reason not to go there because, I mean, look, those guys, they must be the worst fighters. All they gotta do is touch you, right? And they could barely touch one of them, although they did.
Oh, yeah, they did. Yeah, they don't actually get Tyrion, which is surprising. I thought they were going to end with him going under.
Wait, but didn't one of them get Tyrion when he was underwater and it was like...
And grabbed his pant leg, I guess.
Oh, it was his pant leg.
It's gotta be the skin.
Okay, okay, that makes
I guess. Okay.
Yeah.
So as he was going under and they blacked out, I was like, this is an un-Game of Thrones ending. They don't do cliffhangers. That's cheesy. Do you see
They
what
do
I'm
some cliffhangers.
They do.
Like
No,
Jon Snow getting
but-
hit by Craster and stuff. They do some.
I hear you, but not like that. And I was like, don't end it like this. Don't end it like this. And then he wakes up and sees. I'm like, yes, I knew it. Way to be Game of Thrones. Way to be better than normal TV. Okay.
There was so much suspense in that scene, though, because that blackout or whatever lasted forever.
I know.
And I was like,
I
what's
know.
And you were
gonna
waiting for the
happen?
music hit.
I
Yeah.
was waiting for the music and the text, but it never
Yeah.
came.
It was almost a Tony Soprano-like ending. Okay, but
Yeah.
they didn't go that. But God, with Jorah.
When he goes to pull it aside, you know what's going to happen. And that was a very beautiful scene, by the way. He had some actual sun. But yeah, and already it's like this big patch.
It was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking. And
Yeah.
so I'd always wondered why Matt actually, who does the Game of Thrones reviews with us from Rotten Tomatoes, why he and I have always had this debate about Jorah. Is he a good guy or a bad guy? And I thought, well, Matt's read the book, so how could there be a debate, right? Like, won't we find out at the end and doesn't Matt already know, right? And then when I saw his skin, I was like, oh, we never find out because he's going to turn into a stone man. So then in the end, Matt and my debate will never be resolved as to whether he was genuinely this or
I will
genuinely
say
that.
anything could happen. There were
Okay.
that whole scene, significant differences from the books.
Okay.
Like not just in how like the order of events, like coming out of it, huge differences.
Like, I like Jorah so much more than I like Barristan Selmy, that losing him was much more of a blow
I
than
agree.
Barristan
I
Selmy.
absolutely agree with you.
Yeah, but so now we have them working together. It seems like he cut his bonds or whatever. Now they're going to head, I guess, to Marine, and that's where we end up at the end of the episode. So excited for the plot that they're building now to actually turn into the end of the season. It should be quite exciting. Oh, by the way, I pulled Ben. Anna, Cenk, John. We never remember to do that.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us. We'll be back, I believe, in 1 week to review and discuss episode 6. See you later, guys.